Eliminate the workplace excuse. That's what leaders do. This is the Career Blind Spot Podcast. As an entrepreneur, why is Sinners so amazing? That's today's CBQ.
I think Sinners is important for entrepreneurs because it discusses identity and intersectionality and how that can lead to either disaster or success.
Yeah. The voice, wonderful voice. I get complimented on my voice a lot, but I have voice envy now. What'd you say, ASMR earlier? Drew Shaw, so many things. Founder of Voice Threads, this amazing for-profit company that helps nonprofits with mismatched stylized socks that comprise all of my socks. I remember one time I told you, I was like, hey, they're pretty expensive. I get the good cause. You're like, yeah, but they last. I'm like, oh, that means they're not expensive. It's a good investment. And here I am 4 or 5 years ago, still wearing amazing socks. Actor is another one of them. Teacher, recovering, substitute, or educational consultant?
Yeah. Okay. Every single bit of that. Yep.
Yeah. So normally I ask that, but because if you've been listening for a while and if you haven't, there is I think we did at least one. No, we did one, maybe two.
We definitely did two, at least.
But we did one about a different movie, One Night in Miami.
Yeah, that is true.
So I'll have to replug that and post it. But we got Drew Shaw. Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
To come in
again
over to my house in this casual, I always people don't realize where people are when they make podcasts. Not everyone's, NPR, Joe Rogan, big studio.
Well, you just broke the mystery. Now everybody knows where you are.
I want to be real. I'm the man of the people. Anyway, there are going to be spoilers. We're a couple minutes in. But just for those of you who haven't seen it, that's the call to action. Go see it. I don't care if you're a leader or not. Go see it in theaters. Definitely watch it and stream it, but go see it in theaters. You deserve to see a film of high quality. Violent, definitely more for adults. I wouldn't recommend children, teens. That's your call. But for right now, or briefly, I'm going to put it on you, but I can fill in. What would you say Sinners is about without spoiling it for those who haven't been lucky enough to see it?
Oh, wow. So I'll just start off. Sinners has layers. So if you want depth and just a really great story, go see it. If you appreciate great storytelling, great action, great character development, great historical context, go see the movie. It's incredible. But it basically centers around these two twins who are from Mississippi who went to Chicago, came back, and they're starting up this juke joint. And so they kind of rally all these different characters in the community to make this venture successful.
Yeah.
And then they, of course, come across some obstacles, both natural and supernatural. And they are fighting for their literal and figurative survival.
Yeah, and it's very metaphorical, and I think the right word is layers. And man, you should do audiobooks because you do have a very pleasant voice. Even your description, I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't have done that well. But so that is your warning. If you've not seen the movie, and I really hope you don't get it spoiled, but even if you do, it's still going to be great because I saw it a second time on IMAX to see the different
I still
quality.
haven't seen it on IMAX.
Man,
I want to see it so bad.
I hesitate to even say this, but I've said enough that I don't care because I don't want to overhype it. I did see Get Out later on video, and I enjoyed it, but I was like, man, I wish I'd seen it before all the hype came out. And that's happened a couple of times, but it's also great when you are completely surprised. And
sure.
But the IMAX, I was like, immersed. I felt the movie way more. And the first time I loved it. I was already giving it an A+. And really the second time there's all these other stuff, but anything that I thought was maybe not flawed, but less than, I was like, oh, I wonder if this or this. I was like, no, it made more sense. It is an art project, a film. Yes, there's action. Yes, there's violence and stuff, but it is a film. And Drew says it very succinctly, but it's a great story. So you have been warned. Spoilers start now, 4 minutes in. Let's start off with, like I said, Drew's an entrepreneur, but also an educator and, like I said, actor. So that would, how would that fit into this one? So you don't have to squeeze them all in, but let's start off with the first one. Like you said, they're entrepreneurs, and feel free to, again, they've been warned, spoils. They used to work for Al Capone. Illegal things. Now, all things perspective, but they're two black twins played by Michael B. Jordan, who it's hilarious when people don't realize it's one person in two movies because that's how seamless it was. let's talk about the commerce, kind of open ended, but how you've only seen it once, right?
Yeah, only
Okay.
once,
But
unfortunately.
yeah, it's not a competition, true. But yes, I did see it twice now. What from the commerce entrepreneur, like what were just some thoughts, reactions you initially had?
Yeah, I mean, I think the twins in the movie really kind of embodied the entrepreneurial spirit, right?
Yeah.
They launched out, they left where they were, the comfort, well,
Yeah.
quote unquote
Yeah,
comfort of home,
yeah.
and they launched out to the big city to try to make a better life
Yeah.
and see what the world is like. And then they gathered all this experience, they got to meet new people, and then they came back home to start up this new venture.
Yeah, it's funny this, and we're just gonna kind of riff. I have some big points, but even that you kind of correct yourself. They left the comfort of home. You're like 1930s
Hmm.
Mississippi, not that comfortable
Yeah.
for two men, yet alone black men, yet alone brothers. There's this part about the dad and being
Yep.
abusive, and their uncle is the quote unquote better or the nicer
Hmm.
of. But yeah, they're not comfortable,
At all.
and so they leave, but they do come back. And please tell me if I'm wrong here, but looking at it, and again, I love this movie, but I'm like, they're criminals, not just by the standards of legal and hey, you got to get yours, but also like they went to work for people and they screwed them over
Hmm.
to do this thing, and put this club together, this juke joint, but they get their friends and stuff involved. But I'm like, yeah, like I tip my hat to that of like that's amazing. But it's like, I mean, I don't think they ever quite answer it, other than they only came back not to spread the love, was to make money,
Yeah.
right?
And to kind of escape
Yeah,
what the trouble that they were in
yeah,
Chicago, right? But I think also too, they were known, they were kind of infamous, right,
yes,
in their community,
smokestack.
and they were already kind of that in that entrepreneurial space because
Yeah,
all the other business owners knew who they were
yeah,
and they had all these connections and networks in their town in order to make this new venture work. So
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily allude to, or it doesn't necessarily describe what they were into when they were in Mississippi before they left,
yeah,
but we can extrapolate, hey, they were doing something in Mississippi for good or for bad. And I think that they were doing entrepreneurial things, legal or illegal.
the fun I have anyway of being an entrepreneur is you're breaking the rules. Maybe not
Mm,
always illegal, but if you are just a rule follower, and I think short of being an accountant or some type
right.
of like, if you're following the rules, you're gonna lose. But also, if you're breaking the rules, you can lose as well. But we see what billionaires are getting away with today.
Mm,
But they're the brother. I don't think I'd seen twins. I think even by two different actors, but they're nuanced. There's Smoke and
hmm.
Stack, the nicknames, and like you said, they come back and he shoots that guy for looking at the truck,
Yep.
right? And that little girl, which we'll get into in a little bit here, warns him or alerts him to someone who eventually recognizes him. He's like, "Why are you trying to steal from my truck?" And he's like, "Oh, I didn't know it was you." So
Hmm.
that notorious reputation, but they're also when they come back, they know how the town works,
Hmm.
and they're kind of jumping ahead, getting all the black community to come to this thing, and but they also leverage are they Chinese
Yeah,
American,
Chinese. Hmm.
and that have two stores, one
Yeah.
for the black people, one for the white people,
Uh-huh.
and they're not coming in saying, "Hey, this is unfair." This is like, "Hey, can you do this last minute for me?" And I love the little daughter had that twang. It's like,
Yeah.
wait, what is this accent?
Super
And
thick accent.
and apparently she's based on a real person.
Hmm.
But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to highlight here is the commerce of like they're playing the hand that they're dealt,
Hmm.
and they're probably overextending to a degree. But like I mean, I think Drew already said the supernatural part, but like just the first third, if not half, I'm like, I could just live in this movie.
Yeah.
And all the other stuff happens later that I'm very glad happened, and I don't like that was part of it. I was like, I wanted to see this regular life, right? But the allegory and maybe the meta aspect of it, especially with the music, but yeah, that was so. I just loved it. Not just as an entrepreneur, but as a person. Like my favorite scene is the very first scene when the what is the young man's name? The cousin who plays
Sammy.
Sammy. He's picking cotton, but or not, but it's beautiful. The
Mm.
morning, the shot, and then he sees his mom, and she's like washing her face, and he's like, they're laughing, and then he like wakes up. Like I was like, I don't think I've ever. I was like, was I just in a certain mood? And to see it a second time, I'm like, no, this is like, yeah, they're working this hard labor job that has all the what controversial, picking cotton and black. Oh my god, like they're gonna shut my podcast down now.
Hmm.
Um, but that world was so pleasant to see. And as someone who doesn't know, I don't think anyone from Mississippi, let alone a black person from Mississippi.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm asking a question here, but reaction to just the world of these brothers and the work and the labor. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the meeting of worlds, that's the thing about, I mean, even the world that we see now, but especially then too, there's this clash and this rub and contention around the beauty that is surrounding you, but also like the harshness and the brutality that comes with living in a place in that particular point in
Yeah,
time. What if you are a person of a certain identity, right?
yeah,
But it also speaks to, they didn't just enlist the help of other black people, but there were other minority groups who were marginalized in that community who they enlisted the help of as well. And that is a story all on its own. And to your point, we could have just lived in that story
yeah,
the whole time, because every time you met a new character, you're like, wow, I
yeah,
wonder what's their story? What's their
yeah.
background? Like,
Well,
how do
like
they?
the scene where they grab the what's the big guy's name? I forget his name, but there's this heavy set guy who ends up being the
Oh,
bouncer at the club,
cornbread.
Cornbread,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Hey man, come on." He's like, "No, I got a good job here," and
Picking cotton.
then he says something vulgar, whose wife's also picking, and he's like, he's about to go beat him up, and then she's like, "Wait, how much?" And he kind
Uh-huh.
of gives her this look, and there's this whole dialogue, and or even the oh man, the harmonica player. Man, I should have wrote everyone's name down. Um, Oh, he's got a great name to him. I'll have to look it up.
Slim?
Slim, yes, Slim. When they go to recruit him to play music,
Mm,
he's like, "Nah, man, you might be able to pay me." I think he says like $20, which
yeah,
is probably like 1,000 or something
right.
today. Um, but I'm making $300 every Saturday by going to ABC Club, and so just to hear that back and forth and just the temptation and I don't we don't need to spoil everything, but I'm just like this is amazing and kind of a record scratch here. But I'm like, I know why I'm saying that long tirade where I'm telling my black friend about my impression of this movie. The DE and I of it, you said it, and that's what clicked. It's like I'm watching diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm gonna curse here, but fucking done amazingly,
Mm,
flawlessly. The potential, which sadly I don't regularly see. I want to see it, but I'm like, I'm into these people. Do I want to be a criminal? Do I want to? Do I want to be a Christian that works? No,
yeah.
but I'm super fascinated. And the people behind this, the director Ryan Coogler and Michael, like hearing them make this movie, I've gone down a rabbit hole, and it's not the first time. Um, but that's what it was. I was like, oh, this is the crux of hey, I should do a pod about this, not just
Mm.
because I like the movie and it's fun. Although I think I'd probably make a lot more money just reviewing movies with you, man. But the
I'm down.
seeing that perspective of what it took to make money. There was a Netflix show, Madam C.J. Walker, the
Yeah,
woman,
yeah,
and it's always interesting at liberties, but I'm like that stuff is fascinating to me
yeah.
as an entrepreneur. The black part happens to be different, but I like it too. But like, there's a whatever happened to Mister General So's chicken,
Mm,
and it's about chicken, but it's really about or the meal, but it's really about Chinese American culture and the racism. And but
right.
like they show Phoenix sadly a lot of times when they're talking about racism, but that commerce nuanced perspective and going back to our last podcast or the one night in Miami, Malcolm X, Jim Brown, Cassius Clay before Muhammad Ali,
Sam
and
Cooke.
Sam Cooke.
Hmm.
I'm like, you have four black men who are wildly different
Hmm.
and they're friends and they fight. And that is fascinating to
Yeah.
me. That and like I don't it happens to be black, but it's like any movie. I don't Korean
Hmm.
culture or Asian culture, but especially like Korean movies have really popped up. But it's like, yeah, when you really let people tell their story versus, I mean, how many slave movies have there been?
Oh
How
man.
many? What's that movie? Hidden Figures,
Uh-huh.
or what's the other one with the where they eat the shit, the cake,
Oh,
uh,
the help.
the Help. I've enjoyed. I wouldn't say they're bad movies, but I don't know how you felt with those movies. So to see this commerce and like I said, the entrepreneur, that's where I was getting at. It's like, do you feel like? I mean, do you even think the words DE&I in there when you're watching it, or are you just like this? Yeah, this is what we. There's great stories.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, for those of you who didn't catch on, I'm a black man,
Yeah.
but I, but I think in the black community, that's always how we've been. We're very community focused, collectivistic culture, and so whenever we're doing something, we just reach out to the people we know. We depend on each other, And like when you see, you just mentioned all these transactions that happened, right? As a result, they needed a sign, they needed some musicians, they needed some food, they needed some liquor, they needed all these different things, and they just tapped their community for
Yeah.
all these things. And that's what I tell a lot of entrepreneurs. It's like, hey, I know all of us need money and capital to get things going, but it's your community that's
Yeah.
going to make the biggest difference and what's going to get you started, because it's the friends and family. Like if you're raising money, that's the
Yeah.
first round that you go to. You go to your
Yeah.
friends, your family, ask them for some money. You might give them a stake in your company
Yeah.
as a result. But that's how everything starts for the most part.
Two things, if you're comfortable, I think you are, but plug the melanin.
Oh, A Taste of Melanin?
Yeah.
Yeah, so A Taste of Melanin is a program under a nonprofit that I helped co-found. We, during the month of February, we put on all of these different events in celebration of Black History Month to educate, celebrate, and recognize the contributions of Black Americans on American culture. And we do these really curated events that are both fun and educational. Like we'll do a silent disco at ASU Art Museum, and people are dancing around in their headsets, but all the while they're looking and reading different posters we put up about, American culture. The DJ is, intercepting or interrupting the music and giving like
Yeah.
a music fact. We'll do like hip hop karaoke, kind of same thing between acts. We'll give like a musical fact or something
Yeah.
about the music. And so in that way, we are not just creating a good vibe and a great time, but also educating people and letting people understand like, hey, American culture and all the things we love about it
Yeah.
is highly about, or primarily, well, I like to say like all the fun things about America, I think Black people
I
made it.
I think you have a sound case, and I would love to talk about that. I really would, because I'm gonna cut myself off. But the going back to one, thank you for plugging. I didn't tell him to, but I went recently. Actually, that's what I was
Oh
gonna
yeah,
say,
you did.
where I was like, I think I messaged on Instagram like, can I go to this? Like, I don't want to be rude. I remember one time I went to this different event for young Black men it was on the weekends, and an Indian man who had pledged the fraternity. Shout out Dr. Chat. Haven't talked to him in years. He used to fly Air Force One for Reagan and George, the first one.
George Bush, yeah.
He's a very fascinating guy. But he pledged this Black fraternity, and very smart man, very high energy. But I go and I'm like, I can see all the faces looking at me. And if you haven't seen my face is on the logo. If you're looking at this podcast, I was like, I'm the white guy, or at least I'm not the Black guy. And I wasn't scared, but I'm like, oh, should I be in here? Then I'm like, well, the Indian guy, wait, does he have the same this is not everyone can say this out loud, but like it was a real thought. And it was like, I was like, okay, I pride myself. I'm like, I never fit in, so I always fit in. But that day I was like, oh, dude, is this okay? And you had told me, I'll paraphrase and feel free to tweak, but you're like, yeah, you're welcome, but it's not for you. And so you're welcome to come, but like, don't be like, hey, where's the Latino booth and da 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 da. Like, is that fair?
Well, for these events, everyone's welcome.
Yeah.
But because the thing is like Black people know Black people culture.
Sure.
And so in order to create allies, I think that more people need to be exposed to more Black people. It's like whenever, and I applaud you, because you will bring yourself to an uncomfortable
I have no
space.
problem getting kicked out. Like, I'm not gonna feel good, but my main thing, because I hadn't heard of it and I knew you went, but I didn't realize you were behind it.
Yeah.
And this wasn't a Black thing as much as Drew's my friend and an entrepreneur, and we talk about between faith and education, and we maybe didn't even disagree, but I say crazy stuff and you tolerate it. But I'm like, oh, I didn't know he's behind it. At the very least, let me show up to it. And also I had the baby coming, so I was like, I'm not gonna be going anywhere for a while. And it's down the street.
Right.
But then it's like, well, I don't want to be like, and everyone rubbernecks, and then Drew's like, oh, that's my guy. Let me tell him to get out, And I had no problem with you. I think I said, like, if I can't come, I'm not mad. I would understand someone else being upset, but I'm like, yeah, that's why we have to have it, because you're having to have these conversations. So Bunny Trail, but let's bring it back, like you said, the community asking. Shoot, oh man, you said something that, in the movie they open the club, it's great, banging, right? But then one, I think, Smoke the more stubborn one, or I forget which one, but one of the brothers sees that people are paying with wooden coins.
Oh yeah.
And it's basically like food stamps or like a community thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, none of that. We're here to make money. and the other brother, the other brother, I was like, I can't say that one, but no, they were literally brothers. Says, no, we got to let people feel comfortable, blah blah blah,
Mhm.
and it becomes this whole issue. So I'm just curious, like, could you relate to one brother more than the other? Because ultimately, this is to flip money. You know, they're trying to be
Yeah.
entrepreneurs.
I mean, and I think that the I mean, gosh, it was just so cleverly done because the twins represent, two sides of the same coin, right?
Mhm.
Like, and if we're talking about business, you can be one or both of these people at the same time, right? You need your business to succeed, so you need to make money, and
Yeah.
sometimes everything is transactional.
Yeah.
But other times, you need to be relational and be like, hey, I'm going to meet people where they are, and it may not benefit me the way that I want it to benefit me
Directly,
right
yeah.
now, but I'm building a relationship, and I
Yeah.
know that somewhere down the line for longevity, I might have to depend on these people at some point. So I need to like
Yeah.
give a little bit of leeway, but I think the pull and push of their relationship was really, really well done and
Yeah.
clever because the two twins are very distinct and you can
Yeah.
tell them
And
apart.
it's funny because they're not opposites, but you're 100% that like one is more pragmatic and the other one is more feeling and we're actually going to come back to that because I realize this is that's where later on I'm like I'm so glad they had this supernatural aspect to it because that was the reason that they let certain people in. So
See?
before we get into that, let's talk about this big again, we're in spoiler free, you've been warned, but I don't care if you've been warned. I don't care if you've seen it. You watch it again, it's gonna move. Oh hell, I was playing the song when he got here,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, oh man, I can feel it. There's this scene, for those of you who are okay with the spoilers or seen it, where Sammy
Mhm.
plays and he gets down, and they do this very surreal where you see the ancestors, but also the future, and the music
Mhm.
changes. Like, well, I'm giving myself goosebumps. So, what was it like for
Same.
you?
Man, it is the most beautiful, most dramatic, just soul stirring moment of the movie. Because in the beginning of the movie, there's like a narration that describes these kinds of people who exist in the world. They have the ability to tear the veil between the natural and spiritual realm through their music and through their talent. And Sammy is one of these people. And while he's playing, the veil of the natural and supernatural is deconstructed, and you see the transcendence of time and space and all these people dancing in the space with the people who are in the juke joint. And that is actually the beginning of all the drama,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
these
Basically, our
intruders.
six, like you said, kind of the great things about America.
Yeah,
And I mean, I would put, I mean, not an argument. I'm like, but there are other cultures, but it's
for
definitely
sure.
like, look, I mean, even like what right now, psychedelics are big, and
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, indigenous people
Have
have
been
had this
doing
stuff
that.
for a while, but
Yep.
now you can put it in a box and buy it from a Joe Rogan show.
Yep.
Okay, now it's good. Well, what about all the people incarcerated because of and do things get abused, but also money,
Yep.
like, but yeah, that scene, and I was like, are they gonna show Chinese culture? And they did, like they little
Yeah.
peppered it in, and I
Yeah.
felt like it was just the right amount. Even when they did, like the girl was twerking, yeah, it fits.
Yep.
And there's the DJ, and there was another, oh, like there was like a creepy kind of, maybe not
Oh
creepy,
yeah.
but like
It's like from African
startling.
culture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is more one soapbox, not necessarily career blind spot expertise, but I'm like, you say American, I do too, but I'll be like Western culture, capitalistic.
Mm.
We are so anxious and tightly wound when it comes to money, all this stuff. And going back to indigenous culture, you know what seems to be really consistent? All these indigenous all over from, here, Native Americans, Aborigines, whatever, Africa. I'm like, they dance. So I'm
Yeah.
not saying they're the most mentally healthy, but I'm pretty sure they're processing way better than our tight ass could make a diamond because we don't know how to deal with our anger and fear. And going back to diversity, equity, inclusion, I'm like, I think that's also where when I hear people, I don't want to say preaching, but lecturing, you white bosses, I'm like, you're asking them to do a lot. You mentioned karaoke, alone hip hop karaoke.
Yeah.
Most people can't do that. I'll do it. And
Yeah.
Courtney, shout out to our regular co-host, rapped 99 Problems at our wedding.
Come
And
on.
my mixed race cousin, her black husband, was like, "What? I told you she's cool." But does she do it as often as she could? I want my kids to move and sing. I want them to feel comfortable expressing themselves, knowing that they can. I want them to.
Right.
But if I don't do it, they're probably not going to learn how to if we don't do it.
For sure.
So singing, whether, we were talking about, I always think about you when I put my hands up in my air. I'm like, is it really a 90s millennial? I'm like, nah, man. Like, But anyway, I don't know. I got all hooked right there.
That's such an inside conversation right there.
But
Absolutely.
the dancing part of it, we went from commerce to culture with the capital C.
Yeah.
Not this, we're a family here in corporate, which I get, it has its place. But if you're really trying to do DE&I, you can't fake it. And that's I was like, don't fake it. I'd rather you not do it at all, which I think a lot of people would disagree and challenge me, and I'm open to that. But I think it's worse when you say you're going to do it and you don't.
Yep, Target. But I think, speaking of Target, I think it was either the Today Show or Good Morning America. They had the director of DEI for Target on there, and she was talking about how people get caught up in the letters. It's like, we're doing DEI plus belonging. She's like, that doesn't matter. She's like, the goal is to set a culture in place so that the goal isn't necessary anymore.
Yeah.
She's like, if the work is being done, we should care less about the actual words and names that are attached to it. And so I don't know if she was speaking highly of or not of Target or companies like Target, but it's true. She was like, if any company can say they have all these initiatives around DEI and not do anything, but if the work is being done without that particular stamp on it, she's like, that's what we should be applauding. But I'll push back a little bit on that though, because if we can't see it as consumers in that company, then it doesn't matter, because it means it doesn't exist. You're going to have to tell your consumers in the community, hey, we're doing all these different things. You can't just say we're doing the work and we don't ever see any outward marketing or expression of that kind of work. But I agree with her though. I was like, we do get caught up in like, okay, give us your 10 points of your goals that you're trying to meet, and give us, if the work is being done, it should be evident.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's not that they're opposites, but I just said this, I was at a local first thing, which talk about community and business, and it's a small business culture. But hey, when you buy voice thread socks, what 80% of the dollar stays here versus you buy them from Target, 20% of the dollar stays here. And as someone who is not inherently the traditional way of altruistic, I'm like, yeah, I want my money to stay here because I care about, not just I care about my neighbors. I do care about my neighbors, but it's like, look, if my neighbors are doing well, I'm going to do well. And I think we tend to have your greed is good capitalist, you got to make money, or you're a starving artist. And it's like, I actually think of myself today, especially with this podcast, it's like I'm more artist, and that's not necessarily a compliment. It's like I get in my way, I drive myself nuts. Nuance becomes a problem. It's now more complicated. And so I kind of get, and this is going to sound crazy, but it's like when certain type of older people say messed up stuff, they're like, yeah, you shouldn't race mix, it's going to cause problems. Yeah, compared to what they're used to. But I'm glad we did those things, because at the end of the day, I do believe in freedom, whether it's body autonomy or freedom of religion, etc. And sometimes it's going to make me uncomfortable. But maybe not sometimes. A lot of times, you know what's really going to make me uncomfortable? If I couldn't choose. And so why would I want to oppress someone else with that? And so it's complicated. So it's like dancing. I'll say this weird, and Courtney's not here, but like Courtney and I can talk about money. We have to talk about money, pay our bills, kids, etc. But when it comes to our relationship, a little TMI here, not too much, but like when you dance with someone, it's not instruction 1, 2. It's not the waltz. I mean, you could, but like when you really are, and like I can't dominate her, but also can't be too weak. It is this like movement, almost like Tai Chi or something. And it feel, I can even talking about it right now, I feel different. So it's like, here we are, keep trying to mash these things up. And so you have this movie that does a beautiful job of like, it worked, and then it didn't.
And I think that, kind of going to the next point, right? Like the thing that attracted there's vampires in the movie. The thing that attracted the vampires was the talents and the gifts of these Black people. The success. And we can see, and gosh, y'all go see the movie. There's so many layers. If you're looking for it, you'll find it. When the vampires come, they're like, hey, we want to come in. We play music ourselves. And then they start playing their music, and the
Big
folks at
Robin
the and they were like, yeah, nah, we don't think this is your kind of space. And of course, the contention between white people being in Black spaces and vice versa, they were like, yeah, no, this is not going to end well. You guys are not invited in here.
I think I'm right, but they are kind of like, that was pretty good. The brothers and the people in the club,
but it wasn't the right style.
Totally. And not just, hey, we're vampires, we want to kill people, but they're actually after
The culture.
the culture, but that big, I guess it wasn't just the one song, but there, I think what Drew is saying is very important, and I think a lot of people might miss it the first time. That he wants access to this ability, and going back to that commerce part and the wooden coins, and the one brother being like, no, let him have. They go and do the numbers, and they realize we're going to be broke in 2 months.
Yep.
So that money and resources we stole, that Irish beer, we are going to be worse off. And taking these wooden coins actually is hurting us. And so there's another character we haven't talked at all, who in real life, what's the Haley Atwell, or no, that's a different actor, but Haley something, is like 1/8 black, like her grandpa or something. But she looks otherwise like a white passing woman. Although that one scene where she tells that son, like, you better step up. Like, I was like, I know that. Like, when people from Brooklyn, like, I could hear their accent come out harder. Like she did it so well. It was subtle still.
Yeah.
But she is definitely, like, even trying to get in the cornbread, the bouncer's like, what are you trying to do? And then he recognizes her as a childhood friend. But she decides, hey, I'm going to help you guys. I'll go talk to those weird white people, see if we can get their money. And so it's kind of like if I got torn apart by vampires and I could reflect on it and be like, we should have never let her in.
That part.
To see it just snowball. And now you have the supernatural, which I don't think goes to naught. Like, there's still a lot more layers we probably won't cover given the time that we're given. But yeah, that
is the beginning of the end.
But yeah, and I mean, it's a supernatural movie, and I'm like, does that mean like you shouldn't, like, you should completely keep it segregated? You could, but then I also think, but then should we not do DE&I? Because DE&I is saying, no, we need nuance.
Right.
So, this is just the thoughts inspired, challenging thoughts. But it's like I wrote on the bullets for Drew, but I was like, vampires are real.
Yeah.
And, you have this thing, you put all this effort. And I think even people who mean well for you can invite negative things, or at least think, like you said, something good with Target, like the mission. What's the point? And I think that's a good lesson of, like, if you're not keeping your eye on it, you're showing your belly. And I hate to think, like, I mean, I don't believe it, but I don't know about you, like, where you were like, get back in that house or don't let her in. Like, how did you feel seeing? I mean, did you even realize, like, was that the point, or did it take you a while?
And sometimes, as Black people, we like to gatekeep certain information for ourselves, but like, we are very wary of our interactions with dominant culture, or like, I'll just say white people. In the movie, there are two different forces that are coming against this venture that these twins are trying to make. You have, well, we didn't mention this, they bought the juke joint from a person who's in the Ku Klux Klan. And I don't know if they realize it or not. They knew that the guy was not a good person. Yeah. And so they spent a lot of money for this particular space. And then the vampires come, who are also white, and they represent something completely different. So the person they bought the barn from was very overt, very like...
to your point, they actually did know, but they were ready if they weren't.
Yes, because they knew where they were. They know this
To
community.
Your point, to what you just said, they were cautious of, like, look, he might sell this, but the odds are he's going to screw us if not worse.
And so you have this force that most of us are familiar with, or at least Black people were familiar with, like, okay, we know who this person is. Then you get these vampires who don't appear as vampires at first. They just seem like these kind of naive people just walking up. They're like, oh, we heard the music, we want to come. And then you learn the plan of the head vampires. He doesn't necessarily want to destroy the culture. He wants to assimilate it. Right?
The Borg, Star Trek shit.
Right. And both of these forces are equally destructive.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about DEI and what the purpose is, a lot of people think like DEI is this thing, or this idea where people come in and, you kind of fit everyone in. And a lot of people think that it's about just accepting people just based off their skin color, or their race, or their sex, or their whatever. Is not that. What true belonging is like, you can come to your place of work and be who you are. Right. And that's not what the vampires are representing. They wanted like this, one kind of culture, what I call like kind of neoliberalism. But that's not what DEI is. DEI is like, you can come into a space and be recognized, appreciated, and acknowledged for who you are without having to sacrifice your culture and who you are in your space. Because we do our best work when we can be who we truly are. The idea of these two opposing voices, I think in the context of work and entrepreneurship, both of them are destructive.
I remember I think I was a teenager, and someone, I don't know if they were Black, but it was a person of color saying, I'd rather the hardcore racists be my neighbor than basically, I don't think they use this term, but the friendly Democrat
Yeah.
who doesn't want me. No, work for someone who's a hardcore or something. And it's like, then have the friendly Democrat who won't hire me
Yeah.
or doesn't want me to live next to him. And I remember not understanding it. And then years later, I'm like, oh, yeah, there's people who are like, we want affordable housing, but just not in our neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually more of a Democratic thing. As we wind down here, you say vampires, and then you said what'd you say? The neoliberalism, rock stars. When I hear people say, oh, they're a rock star, it's not necessarily an insult, but I don't take it as the compliment. It's you've conformed. You have joined Nickelback, and we're selling billions. If I want fulfillment, and I think truly everyone, punk rock, or in this case, the blues. Courtney likes jazz and the blues more than I do. I can listen, but I have a totally different understanding. And so we've said it a couple of times, but go see the movie because it's an experience. And especially after years of being isolated with staying indoors, take it while you can. You never know. And I highly encourage you to see the IMAX version if you can. And any other words or takeaways for entrepreneurs, for Black people, for people from Mississippi, I don't care. That's where I feel honored that you come on this show. Let me ask these questions, even when we're not recording, because I'm like, am I taking? Am I exploiting my friend's opinion? Before we start recording, because I want to know, but also what could happen later on. So I feel honored that you even give me the time, man.
No, I mean, thank you for inviting me on, and I think that I've seen people who are white who've gone to see the movie and they're like, I don't see what the hype is. It's like, I understand because it probably wasn't for you necessarily, but if you go with the mind of like, let me examine myself in the context of this movie and like, what role do I play in this? I think you'll get a lot more out of it.
Yeah.
And it might be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it should be
Yeah.
in some respects, because a lot of us live without having to think about some of these issues that come up in the movie. And that's privilege. And that's okay. You didn't do anything for it. You can move differently as a result of what you've learned. So go see the movie, be uncomfortable, ask some friends about it, and hopefully you come away with a positive experience.
That's if you actually believe in commerce and hard work and community and letting people be free, go see the movie and feel uncomfortable. Because I can't imagine you felt comfortable the whole time. I'm sure there's some beautiful scenes, but there's also some like, oh shit scenes. Yeah. And so that's kind of the point. And I respect people for not wanting to, but it's like, no, how do I do better? Not just with Black people, but any culture, But that's also something that I'm way ahead on compared to the average person who's being told, you need to be more inclusive. And it's like, man, we're already off to it. It's like telling me, Juan, you need to go to church. So thank you, Drew. That was amazing.
My pleasure.
Love you, brother. Peace.
I make this show for leaders, those who don't point fingers, but point towards ways they can do better at work. My ask for listening is you share the show on social and or with other leaders, established or aspiring. Until then, no talent, no culture, no excuses.